So often the result of our paintings hinges on the paper. Are you looking for ways to improve your watercolor painting, be more consistent, have better results, and feel less frustrated at the end of your paint session? Welcome, Process Art Discovery audience. I'm Lynda M. I'm a watercolor artist in British Columbia. Thank you for joining me today as we explore how paper can affect that end result for you. First and foremost, I think it's important to have a good quality paper. Paints vary. There's thousands and thousands of different pigments available through hundreds and hundreds of different companies. All of them have different qualities, and often it's a case of just having to explore what those feel like on your brush and give the results that you might be looking for. We all have different appreciation of what our end result could look like. But right now we're going to talk about the various papers, and often, especially for painters starting out, price is an issue, cost of supplies, and it can vary. I mean, the sky's the limit, really. There are some huge costs out there for some of the supplies. Student grade papers, easy to come by. You can get them at any craft store generally. Sometimes even the dollar stores will have student grade watercolor paper. The first thing you need to look for is 140 pound. Now, whether that's cellulose or 100% cotton paper, there's even linen papers that some people use. But the 140 pound will give you the thickness that you need to allow the watercolors to absorb and do what they need to do. The thinner the paper, like if it's 140 pound, you may want to tape it down to a surface, to a piece of coroplast or something, so that it doesn't buckle and move around any more than it already will once it's wet. But today, for these demonstration purposes, we're going to quickly go through the various papers. So I've got student grade 140 pound cellulose paper, and then I've got some 140 pound paper from MianL that showed up at my doorstep. I've got 140 pound Arches paper, which is one of my favorite brands, Arches, A-R-C-H-E-S. Some people call it Arches. Beautiful 100% cotton. MianL is 100% cotton as well. And all of the cotton papers are treated with a gelatin as well as are the cellulose papers as well. And then I've got some beautiful Arches 300 pound paper. Now the weight of the paper is broken down to pounds, but it's actually grams per square meter, and that's how they weigh it and measure it. So as my videographer, Lorenz at Process Art, was explaining to me that when I say 300 pound paper, he had a visual that looked a little unmanageable for the art table. So this is it. It's almost like cardboard, 100% cotton. It's very absorbent, and you will see, hopefully, that the difference is remarkable. And then I've also got a 300 pound on a block by a company called Fluid 100, and it's a lot smoother than the Arches 300 pound on the big sheet. And this came on a full sheet. This came on a full sheet that is 22 inches by 30 inches, and I've just cut it down for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to set this all aside, and we're going to start with there we go. I'm going to start with the Canson paper, the student grade cellulose paper. And I thought, for fun and a quick way to demonstrate how this might work, is to do the spatter technique that I so love to do when I make my landscapes, doing vignettes and that kind of thing. So I'm going to, first of all, pardon me, I'm just going to wake up my paints I use Daniel Smith paints in my palettes pretty much exclusively. They're high quality pigments in gum arabic as a binder, and I love the consistency that provides me using their brand. I'm just going to take off some of the excess water so we're not dripping everywhere. And for demonstration purposes, I'll stick to my favorite colors, I think, and maybe add a little bit of alizarin crimson for some effect. But I have my MianL dark blue, undersea green, and my quinacridone gold. Typically my favorites. I have quinacridone purple and some alizarin crimson that I very often will add in, and moon glow, which is a beautiful granulating kind of color. And so to start off with my vignettes, as I typically do, I use a spray bottle that comes just spurting out. And that's, handy to get a bottle that comes from your drugstore, dollar store, wherever, that has an adjustable nozzle on the end of it. So you can keep that spatter random, and the droplets are different sizes and shapes. And then I'm going to go in with my Lebenson Goat and Synthetic Blend brush, 1.5 inch bristles. I love this brush. You probably get tired of hearing me say this, but it is just so beautiful that it can hold so much pigment and so much water. But what I want to do is, now that I've got that much water on my page, I just want to go in and pick up on the tip of my brush just a bit of that MianL dark blue, and I just want to touch in. If I sit back, I can see where those water droplets are sitting, and I can touch the tip of my brush in those water drops. And as a landscape artist, I paint a lot of trees, and this is one of my favorite ways to do that. So the Canson paper is drying quickly. That's interesting. The water has absorbed to a certain extent, but I'm finding that it's not moving the paints quite the way I often like them to move. So I will go in and just do some back and forth to make some tree shapes when there's no water droplets to make that happen on its own. And we'll just bring a few more of those in, just filling in some of that background. So the MianL dark blue is, it's working not bad on this paper. I'm not really unhappy with that. Where you'll notice the difference in the paper is in the buckling and in the blending, I think, of some of the colors. So now we'll go in with the undersea green and add a few little elements there. I'm just seeing that the pigments are just not moving on the page like I'm used to them doing. Now the cellulose paper, the student grade, is great. I don't mind it for smaller pictures, especially if I'm doing greeting cards and that kind of thing. But I'm just finding that this is not really allowing my pigments to blend and move the way I normally like them to do. So just before I wrap up on this piece of paper, I'm going to add a bit of the quinacridone gold, and just to see where that's going to work and how that's going to come together. Yeah, there's not enough texture on the page for this type of application, which is a way I love to paint. So it's diffusing and it's spreading out and it's becoming sort of like a puddle. So I'm not, see, this is not a type of a paper that I would normally use for a vignette, a larger painting. And it's hard for me to step away from a painting that's not finished, but I'm going to just leave this and move on to the next one. But you can see where the water and the pigment really seem to be struggling. They're just kind of sitting there. For me, I find that the cotton papers tend to bring that movement better. So we'll move on quickly to the Arches 140 pound. Whoop. And now I've done that. I'm just going to turn it over because I spritched way too much on there. And we'll go back in with our MianL dark blue, and we will get these pigments into the droplets of water. You can see this paper too, it's 140 pound, 100% cotton, but it is, because I put a fair bit of water, I think I'll suck some of that out of there. It was starting to buckle a fair bit there. But if you put some nice dark pigment into these water droplets, and you just barely have to touch the tip of your brush, and you get a nice movement with your pigments. And fine-tuning a couple of the trees. That wasn't a very straight line, but that's okay. We'll fill it in. And one more application with the blue, and then I'm going to go in with the green and show you how that worked. It's hard to tell, I'm sure, on screen, but it just feels different. You'll notice how the paint sits differently. It just moves differently because the water has absorbed differently into the paper. So if we go in with a bit of the green, I'm just going to give that paint another little wake-up call. And we'll get some green in here and move some of that water around. Another thing with the cotton paper is that your brush techniques will be better displayed. So you can run the side of your brush and get some lovely textures and be able to move the pigment and the water and know how that's going to work. No matter what paper you decide to use, stick with it, work away at it, try different things, try different techniques, see what's going to feel best for you. And certainly, you know, when it comes to watercolor, my best advice is buy the best you can afford, starting with your paper. And don't be afraid, it's paper. You know, you can usually resurrect things if they go really sideways, or you can turn it around and use the back of the paper. Or you can cut it up and make bookmarks. You know, not every piece that you paint has to be a masterpiece. It's all in the process, and it's learning. Every time you touch paper or touch paint to your paper, you are learning something about how that pigment is going to react, how that paper is going to make things work for you. So again, I'm not going to finish this. I just wanted to show you how the papers will work. I'm anxious to get to the 300 pound in our short amount of time here. So let's kind of do that. I will just, before we take away from here, I will just add a bit of the quinacridone, and you can see where adding the quinacridone, I'm adding quite a bit of it here. It's diffusing, but it's not pushing itself completely across the page as it did on the other one. Because of the texture of the paper, the amount of absorbency in the paper, it has been changed. It's not moving the way it had before. And so this one has got, for me, some potential. I will continue on and finish that, bringing that into another vignette painting. But you can also see where the 140 pound 100% cotton paper does buckle. So the advantage, to having that taped down is something you'll appreciate, that's for sure. So that's the 140 pound on watercolor, Arches watercolor paper. You can see the colors in this one don't stay as vibrant. They've kind of faded right out, and I'm just trying to show you the brush marks there. They don't feel the same. Your brush does not feel the same on that surface. Okay. This is 140 pound paper. It's from the MianL company, and we'll just give that a real quick test as well. See what happens here. I think this will be a lesser price point for you than the Arches or some of the others, and I don't mind how that's moving. It seems to have a good flow to it. And yeah, it's got, it feels, it's hard to explain, but it feels like the cotton paper wants to actually play a part in moving that water and that pigment around. And that's something I just absolutely love. It gives that organic and abstract kind of feel, and I don't know, it just sort of adds a little bit of mystery every time I sit down to paint. Because I don't paint from reference generally, I like the element of surprise almost that comes with this loose kind of painting, and making these unusual trees and shapes that happen in our, this is I don't mind this paper at all. It seems to be quite lovely. And then we'll go in with a little bit of the undersea green. And I can see some nice water droplets still on the page in the background there. And we'll just work those through. Some tree shapes. Use the side of the brush and see how that works. I don't have an issue with this paper at all. It's quite lovely. It's allowing my brush marks to show up. And then we will quickly, I just want to take a thirsty brush and just soak up that puddle there. It seems to be quite a big puddle. And then we will add our quinacridone gold. See where that takes us. Put a couple of tree shapes there. And just on this side for a bit of balance. Let that gold work its magic in behind. I love how the quinacridone gold pushes the other pigmented paints away and produces a bit of a glow. And gives you that light play that is so beautiful in a painting. It also can be, as you can see here, very rich and golden and orange. And as you pull that through, so this paper, 100% cotton again, has great potential, I think, for a vignette. And I think we'll do more of the vignette style paintings in the days to come. So I don't mind that. It's a 100% cotton MianL paper. This one's available online. I don't believe we have it locally in our art stores, but I'm liking that. I think that's colors are staying vibrant as opposed, compared rather to the Arches paper. Yeah, I would continue on doing vignettes with that one, absolutely. Now we have some water droplets here. Quickly want to move on to 300-pound 100% cotton paper from Arches. You really don't have to turn this, or tape this down rather. And we're just, and my paint is still nice and juicy. And I've got some nice lines of paint, or water here rather. I'm going to go right down here to the bottom of where that water area stopped. And there's no water on this side, so I'm just going to have to make a little hillside or something to bring it down to the others. And then another. I just love how the water pulls that pigment and takes it out and creates shapes and basically builds the foundation of your painting. Yeah. I'm using the pigment fairly thick. I don't want it too watered down because I do have, oops, that's the wrong spray bottle. I do have watercolor or water droplets on the paper, so let's just get a few of the green lines in here. Bring those out a tiny bit, and I don't mind that they're touching that blue a tiny bit on the edge. That will just help to diffuse that that water. Oops, right into the sepia. Didn't want to do that. And then a little more in the green in the background here. There's a little bit of water on the side, not a lot, but I just want to bring that green in. And I'm going to add some quinacridone gold to that just to make that an interesting little spot. First, I want to finish this little green tree here. Now, as these dry, they will lighten up a little bit, as our watercolors tend to do. And I'm kind of happy with this little guy over here. I love that these tree shapes are very unusual, and just going to make that a tree back there because it looks like it needs to be a tree. You can see how the 300-pound paper is sitting flat. It's puffed up in the center a tiny bit, but it's not got the warps in it that we typically see. And add a little more water to my brush just because I spread this area out a little bit, and the paper has already absorbed so much of that water that it dries a little quicker than some of the others. But by having that pigment absorbed into the paper, it does give you a very different reaction. And then just for a little balance, we'll add a little bit of the quinacridone gold, just perhaps down here a little bit. And so here is another one that I will spend some time finishing at some point. I think because I just love the way that the water has pulled that pigment in certain areas and made those tree shapes quite unusual. We'll pull some of this down a little bit and make those into, who knows, an embankment, a rocky shoreline at some point. But the 300-pound paper is, for my eye, a more organic. It lends itself to a more beautiful movement of the pigments. And then last but not least, we have 300-pound paper, but this is a smoother finish. This is the 300-pound Fluid 100 brand. It's on a block, so it's not likely to lift and buckle as much. So let's do a quick application. Just get some spatter on here, and we'll just wet our paints a tiny bit more. And as with the other ones, we'll start with our MianL dark blue. And this, it doesn't have quite the depth of texture that the Arche does, but it's just luscious to have that surface for that pigment to move around on. And my paints are fairly wet. People talk about skim milk, cream, and whipping cream kind of a consistency. I'm sort of in the middle. I'm about an 18% cream consistency on my paints for this. And if you've got a big water drop, then you don't want your paint to have, or your paintbrush to have that much water on the brush. So you've got to keep an eye on things. And if you sit back, like I say, you can find those water droplets and just very lightly touch the tip of your brush into where those drops are. Because this is very thick and it's a softer surface, the water droplets have pretty much dried in a lot of the places. I won't go back and spray again overall because I don't want to dissipate the paint that's on the paint or paper already. So I would just leave that, and this would be a more minimalist type of painting. And use the side of my brush to pull out some tree shapes, make them a little thicker perhaps on the bottom. So that's one thing that you'll notice is with the 300-pound paper, it's much more absorbent. You'll need more water. Some artists treat their paper, soak it, let it sit, soak it and let it sit. And that's beautiful if you're painting a large surface. For this technique, I'm not painting a large surface. I'm painting in the water drops. So I'm not too concerned about that. I don't mind having the dry paper in the background and give, you know, gives it that almost sketchy look. I think this is a really fun exercise to learn more about your papers, more about your brushes even, and we can explore that in another video as well. To learn what your brushes can do for you. Learn what your paints can do for you. There's just, there's so much to explore. And there's no right way, there's no wrong way. We all hold our brushes differently, we all approach things differently, we have different sensibilities to what appeals to us, and that's the beauty of it. That is the absolute beauty of watercolor. And as I'm wrapping up here, I'm just going to throw a little bit of green in to give a base and some shadows. We won't put so much green in up in the trees, a little bit here and there perhaps, just for some interest. And then I would go in later on and add some definition to some shoreline perhaps. And we have another little forested scene. The white parts to me right now look like they could be a little bit of a snowy embankment in the background. And if we wanted to add a bit of that Quin gold, we could certainly do that, just to brighten up a little bit on the foreshore here. And again, I would leave a lot of the white areas just white. This paper, I could go in perhaps with a bread tab or something and create a rocky embankment. But I think it's probably just going to be just the way it is. I don't mind that at all. I like those sort of ghost trees in the background. So my preference always will be the heavier 100% cotton paper. But you can see this was the student grade paper, just not as vibrant. The pigments didn't show up as nicely as they could have. I'm just adding a bit more color here to see if I can darken it up, but you just won't get the same vibrancy as you will with 100% cotton paper. And there again, that's personal preference, whether you want 140 pound, 300 pound. They're all fun to work with. Play around. If you get a chance to try the heavier 100% cotton papers, I hope you do. Have some fun. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me here today. If you like what you've seen, subscribe to the channel or head on over to the membership area.